Ladies and gentlemen, here we are, the Morgan Thomas Show, with 1 minute 51 seconds. The first ever loser support group that I have ever started during a game. Clemson currently down 21 points, 28-7 in Durham, as the fans with a minute 41 are already on the field on the sidelines. They're basically not waiting. I have not seen security allow something like this with a minute 41 left. I mean, at the point you're going to get to a point where there will be fans on the field. There's no way around it. There already are fans on the field at this point. And it doesn't seem like security is able to do much about it at all. The student body section is basically in the out of bounds area with a minute 41. I don't understand. That's a little bit crazy as I'm still watching the game, a minute 41 to go. With that being said, though, Clemson on schedule right now to lose by 21 points in a game where they were favored by 13. Sometimes this week they were 13 and a half, some as low as 12, but still in a game where they were favored, in a game where they had a roster much, much better than the team that they were playing against. They lose by 21 points. A lot can be said about why that happened. Cade Klubnik is the quarterback this year, and this is his first game this season as the true starter for Clemson. He had 63% completion percentage, better than Riley Leonard. He threw 27 completions, 43 attempts for 209 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Riley Leonard, on the other hand, had 17 completions, 33 attempts, 175 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 52% completion. So Cade Klubnik statistically had a better game than Riley Leonard, which I don't know if I necessarily would have thought that would be the case, but because I do feel like that Riley Leonard is a very good quarterback. Now we're looking at Cade Klubnik. You're leaving this game with more questions than answers as they finally take the final knee and the crowd storms the field. Massive storm of the field here. Duke upsets Clemson, number 9 Clemson at home, 28-7. Dabo Swinney going to be walking away from this game, honestly, probably feeling like this is maybe one of the worst games he's ever had in his history. I mean, he's had worse games, but has he had a more talented team? I don't know. Honestly, I feel like that in a lot of ways we were told, and statistically speaking, and according to 24/7 Sports, this is the most talented team Clemson has had ever under Dabo Swinney. And in that case, in my opinion, would be ever at all. So how did we get to where we're at with a 28-7 blowout? Again, a 13-point favorite in this game, was supposed to be a challenging game, but a game that was winnable turned into a game that was always out of reach for Clemson. They got really close, and it felt a lot like the Tennessee game, where they would get into an area where they could possibly score, and something went wrong. Let me hit the intro, and then I'll be back and take a look at the chat.
The Morgan Thomas Show.
Welcome back in. This is the Losers Support Group, which I didn't expect to have to do this for the first game of the season, but it's not the only time I've ever done it for the first game of the season. I've done it in the past, albeit with against Georgia. So much better game to have a Losers Support Group for than this game. That's for sure. So let's take a look at the chat. Well, before we go into the chat, let me just give you some more stats, okay? So some of the things that I look at to see, how bad it was. Clemson had 422 yards. Duke had 374 yards. So Clemson had about 50 more yards. They outgained them in passing 209 to 175. They outgained them in rushing 213 to 199. So they had more yards than the other team. Duke had 7 penalties for 45 yards. Clemson had 1 penalty for 5 yards. So they had really basically no penalties for Clemson. Clemson had 29 first downs. Duke had 17 first downs. Clemson converted 7 of 15 third downs, and Duke converted 15 of 15, or 5 of 15 third downs. So far, in 6 statistical measures that you would think a team would win this game, Clemson has won. Now, fourth down, Clemson was 0 for 2, and Duke was 1 for 1. That, to me, doesn't mean a ton. Clemson ran 83 plays to Duke's 64 plays. So Duke was more efficient with less plays. They had 5.8 yards per play. Clemson had 5.1 yards per play. Duke was more efficient in yards per pass and more efficient in yards per rush. 10.3 yards per pass for Duke, 6.6 yards per rush for Duke. Clemson 7.7 and 5.3. So while Clemson statistically had many more snaps and many more yards, or I wouldn't say many more yards, but more yards, it took them almost 20 more snaps to get just 50 more yards. So efficiency-wise, there's a huge concern there. Why does it take Clemson so long to have success? Why does it take Clemson so many plays and a team like Duke so little amount of plays to have more success? I mean, it makes no sense to me. That was the reason why Garrett Riley was brought in. I mean, statistically speaking, in 2022, Garrett Riley was a guy who was scoring in 5.5 plays or less with TCU. Efficiency is Garrett Riley and Lincoln Riley's MO. I mean, they've been efficient in college football since day one, from my opinion. So what is the difference? Why is this team so inefficient? What is their problem? What is the concern there? Much can be said about Cade Klubnik's decision-making and the decision-making in the players that he chose to pass to, and the decision-making, the one critical play where, I mean, literally one of the critical drives, he slid much shorter than the first down marker. And was very frustrating, I'm sure, for many fans. In the red zone, that's another place. Again, efficiency-wise, Clemson 1 for 4. Duke 2 for 2. When Duke got in the red zone, they finished the job. Clemson could not finish the job today. They got in the red zone twice. They got in the red zone 4 times and scored only once. They had missed field goals. They had fumbles. And it was a terrible showing as far as efficiency goes and execution. We talk about execution all the time on the radio. Execution. Get this, Clemson not only ran 83 plays, almost 20 more plays, 19 more plays than Duke, but they had the ball for over 6 minutes more than Duke. Clemson had the ball 33 minutes. Duke had the ball 26 minutes. Now, turnovers was huge as well. This game was won by 21 points. 15 of those points came off of 3 turnovers. Clemson had 3 fumbles and 2 were lost. And Clemson had 1 interception. So Duke, even still, won by 21 points. If you take away 15, they still won. I mean, so the turnovers, you could probably say, well, the turnovers got them. They beat them everywhere else but the turnovers. But Duke was still able to come away even further than the turnovers allowed. So they were able to score more points than just off of turnovers, in other words. Could this be the worst loss in Clemson Dabo Swinney history? Worse than West Virginia? It's Duke's first win versus an AP top 10 opponent since they beat Clemson, of all people, in 1989 when I was 2 years old. As we mentioned in the pregame show, the running backs, all the 3 running backs. Now, they had 1 running back that was out that I was not aware of that was out. But Waters, Moore, and Leonard all scored touchdowns. They didn't have any receiving touchdowns. Calhoun, though, Waters, Hagan, Moore, all had a ton of catches. But again, it was efficient. I mean, Clemson's receivers had 10 more catches and 30 more yards, but just couldn't get the job done in the red zone. Could not get the job done in an efficient amount of plays. In scenarios when you're down, and especially with the scenario now with the new clock, you cannot take 15 to 20 snaps to score. All this afternoon, all this weekend, rather, I saw the top offensive teams scoring in 5 plays or less. And yet here we are yet again, another season. Clemson has a new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, and they still can't figure out how to score quickly and efficiently. The times where they were throwing deep balls, they were double covered. I don't understand it. I'm not a football genius, but what I see on the field that concerns me is that there are plenty of other teams that are maintaining their offensive skills and ability, and there are plenty of other teams that are improving those offensive ability. And somehow Clemson has come out in their first game of the season and seemingly gotten worse. After all this talk of, oh, they're more confident. Oh, there's an excitement in the locker room. They come to a game like this. Very confusing. Very confusing. Guys like Adam Randall, 1 catch, 8 yards. Jake Brenningstool, 1 catch, 10 yards. two guys that we were told were going to be of the top 5 guys, 2 catches for 18 yards. Brandon Spector, one of the top 5 guys we were told, wide receiver, 1 catch, 0 yards. Antonio Williams, again, 7 catches for 56 yards. Second most receptions on the team, Will Shipley. Will Shipley actually had a touchdown there in the red zone, the only touchdown of the night. All right, let's get in the chat. The game is over, and we'll take a look at it. But be prepared, Clemson fans. This week and the next 3 weeks leading up to the Florida State game are going to be absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. It's not going to be good for Clemson. It's not going to be good for Clemson fans. I'm looking at my Twitter, and I got the video up, but it's like it's not playing. So let me share the YouTube. While you're here, make sure you like the video to help other Clemson fans out to see this if they're out there. All right, so now you know how the losers support group goes. Let me explain to you the losers support group real quick if you've never done it. The losers support group is a scenario where you get in here and you can say whatever you want to say in the chat. Now, as long as it's PG friendly, I will say it. Okay? And man, my light is very, very bright. Let me fix it. When I do recordings, the light is not that bright. But when I do this live show on a different system, the light is very, very bright. All right, here we go. Let me turn the camera here. We'll do it this way. We'll do it this way. Here we go. All right. Chat's coming up. Gerald Higgs over on YouTube says, complacency has set in. Miss the Roy days from Dabo. Complacency has set in. Are the players in the current roster too comfortable? Christopher Jones says, definitely was not expecting this loss tonight. I figured maybe Florida State would have been our first loss. Tip your hat to Duke, but Clemson definitely beat Clemson tonight. Are you going to get away with that? You can get away with Clemson beat Clemson tonight? Can you get away with that? Statistically speaking, the part where Clemson beat Clemson was 15 points. But Clemson lost by 21. So Clemson was still behind, but to Christopher Jones's point, 2 of those drives were heading towards a score, at least 3 points. So it would have been, without the turnovers, I think it would have been a close win. Would you have been okay with a close win and a performance like this? Jonathan Benton says that offense was not what I was expecting from a Riley-led squad. What do you think was the reason for that? What caused the offense to not be able to perform the way other teams have been able to perform? I mean, Garrett Riley took a 5-7 TCU team and made them into a national championship team in one season. And now Clemson's going to get on the plane coming home to this. Tig says, what I want to know is who lied to the Clemson fans? Did you see any elite wide receiver play? I sure didn't. You feel lied to? There was a lot of talk in the offseason. I know about confidence from the wide receivers for sure, about how much more confident they were, how exciting it was, plays they were lighting up the defense. It always baffles me at how great I think Clemson's defense is, and then to see another team just basically pick them apart. I mean, did Riley Leonard do anything fancy to beat Clemson? No, he just played his game. Literally, Duke played their game, and it chewed up Clemson for 28 points. I mean, the one touchdown was a gift given on a botched punt. I think I'm being punished for laughing at the Gamecocks. Yep. Yep. We're both in the same boat now. Both 0-1. Although they will, remind you that Clemson lost by 1 last season. Only last season matters, though. The last 7 seasons before that don't matter. But only last season. Hit Wonder 101. The play calling was not that different from last year. Screen, screen, screen. Shaking my head. Well, I've seen the offense practice. I've seen the plays. Some of the plays ran before the season started. I can agree. I was anticipating that. I was not surprised that the offense looked very similar. Maybe DJ wasn't the problem after all, Toby on Facebook says. Maybe DJ wasn't the problem after all. The sad thing about this all story is that DJ had a great game yesterday. DJ had a great game yesterday. Cade has not. Tiggs, the lack of effort by the wide receiver core is alarming to say the least. You feel like there was a lack of effort? Who's the number one group to blame, or is it a group effort? Hart Vaughn says over on Facebook, let's be honest, we deserved it. I don't know what you mean by that. We deserved it. Anybody out there feel like they can relate to Hart? You feel like that you somehow deserve this? My question, Hart, would then be, what caused the deserving? What caused you to be deserving of it? That would be my question. If Clemson deserved it, what caused that? Clemson Carson waited all offseason for this pathetic excuse of a showing. Hope Dabo gets all the heat imaginable for this. This team makes a simple fundamental look difficult. I will say, again, Duke did not have to do trick plays. They didn't have to do beamer ball. They even made mistakes in beamer ball. I mean, Duke did not have to do anything fancy to beat Clemson by 21 points. Riley Leonard was Riley Leonard. He was the guy that we thought he would be, and Clemson could not stop him. In the pregame show, I told you that I was concerned about the running attack. I was concerned about the continuity and the cohesiveness between Riley Leonard and the wide receivers that he has, and the running backs that he has because they've played together. They're familiar. Familiarity showed tonight. Duke players trusted each other much more, it seemed. Seemed to not necessarily trust, but I would say understand. One thing that was weird to me, so Jonathan on YouTube says, Morgan looks looking shell-shocked. Yeah, I feel that way. One thing that I will say is that was weird to me, you see in the pros when a team gets into the red zone, you see the play, the passing play, where you roll out of the pocket and you throw it to the back of the end zone. I'm not understanding why there's no wide receivers going across the back of the end zone. I mean, odds are if it's not there, you just throw it into the third row of the stands. I mean, that is like Aaron Rodgers' go-to thing. Either you get that play to the back of the end zone or you just throw it to the freaking stands. To me, there was no passing attempt to the end zone, in the end zone. I'm very concerned whether or not the plays were there or not. I'll have to go back and watch, but I'm very concerned with Cade Klubnik and his ability in the red zone. He seems like a guy who is getting worse as the field gets shorter. I'm very concerned about that. One thing that I'm not concerned about is he seems to not be rolling back 20 yards. So he obviously is improving certain things. But what we're seeing here from the Tennessee game and now from this game is his ability to complete the deal in the red zone without having to use his legs, I'm concerned about. And without having to throw it behind the line of scrimmage. Tater King, if things don't improve drastically by the end of the year, Dabo needs to completely clean house and start over. The first person I would show the door would be Tyler Gresham. It's very difficult to do that. I mean, considering you're still recruiting well, but I can understand the frustration there. Something is not right with these players. This group of players is not fitting. And what we're figuring out here now is that Garrett Riley has a much more difficult task. And if Garrett Riley can't turn it around, what solution is there? There is no solution. I mean, he's thought of by many as the best offensive coordinator out there other than his brother. I mean, outside of him and Josh Heupel, you're not going to get him. And Leby at Oklahoma. Unfortunately, Clemson has now made my list of worst teams of the week, I think. I haven't looked at it yet, but I'm starting to make a bottom 10 and a top 10 best and worst teams of the week. And I think Clemson has underperformed so poorly that they are making the worst team of the week. Christopher Jones, so much for the air raid offense. By the way, it was called Dirt Raid. The only downfield shot I saw them take was the one pass to Turner in the first half. Well, the passing chart will be coming soon. That's for sure. I'll do the passing chart to see if that's true or not. I know there were a couple of deeper balls. It did seem like Cade Klubnik was afraid to throw the deep ball. But the times that he did throw, plus 20 yards was in double coverage. So something's going on to where they're still not able to get players open. Is it to the point where these players cannot be schemed open? Lee Harden says there's no way that garbage team is going to be able to hang with the likes of Florida State and Notre Dame and probably not even Syracuse. By the way, Syracuse destroyed Colgate. Of course, it was Colgate. I don't see how Clemson can hang with Florida State at all. And I don't see how Clemson, who wasn't able to beat Notre Dame last year, is going to beat them this year. One thing's for sure, the ticket prices for the Florida State game should be getting much, much cheaper. Hart says, how could we get Riley and not air raid? We averaged 6+ yards a carry and still didn't do much. Efficiency was terrible. Duke had less yards across the board, but had 20 less plays, 19 less plays. Yards per play, they were much better than Clemson. Duke was a much more efficient team than Clemson, and that's what's scary to me. This roster is not efficient. They don't know how to be efficient. They may not have the players to be efficient. If you need 83 plays to do barely better than a team that needed 60, then you got a lot of 3 and outs in your future. You got a lot of you got a lot of quick 3 and outs as well, you know. Joseph Rose over on Facebook says tough turnovers tonight. That's for sure. Hart gets in again over on Facebook, says, but I will say this is where we see the fans that have been around. Tig said he quit watching the game in the third quarter. I heard a lot of people did that. Cade Club, I won't say that name. Wes Goodwin needs to go. He played zone all night against Duke. Brent lived in man coverage, putting people on an island. Those screens need to go. I feel like it is just as much on the defense. I mean, 28 points. If you look at Duke's success last season, right? Let's just take that into consideration here. Okay. When we pull up my statisticals for Duke, where are you at? Duke averaged 32.8 points per game last year. They averaged 416 yards per game. And I have lost my stat broadcast sheet here. Here it is. Duke had 374 yards. So statistically speaking, I mean, Clemson held them to under their averages from last year for both points and yards, but not, yards per play as well. So they held their quarterback under their average for QBR. No sacks for Clemson, by the way. Duke had 2 sacks for 11 yards. Clemson had no sacks today. No, we didn't have a better roster, only on paper where it counts, not where it counts. Joseph Rose said 3 momentous turnovers, 21-point differential. Donnie Hall gets in over on Facebook and says, Dabo is the problem. Don't make yourself better with the transfer portal at receiver. No stretching of the field at all tonight. Is it finally time to say that the recruiting and the players that are on the team just can't get it done? And everyone else is using the portal but Clemson to improve their roster. And all the other teams out there are finding success and not having their cultures die. Jacob gets in, says, we've gotten outcoached 3 of the last 4 games. I'm guessing the UNC game is the one you're not. So you're saying the South Carolina game, the Tennessee game, and now this Duke game. You feel that way? The Hat gets in with a good comment here over on YouTube. Refs made a terrible mistake by giving the ball to Duke after a personal foul with targeting. I thought that was interesting. They basically said, okay, because Cade started his slide down, once you'd have done that, for player safety, the play is immediately blown dead. So anything after that would be after the play. And in that case, it was a dead ball after the play, targeting hit, late hit. If you think about it, in Hat's position, I agree. If you think about it, if that hit would have happened as Cade was going out of bounds, play would have continued. Clemson would have kept the ball. Clemson would have kept the ball if he would have been hit like that out of bounds. But because he slid down the way he did, Brian over on YouTube says, another game where special teams cost the team dearly. I think there was some momentum hurt from the missed field goals. 2 missed field goals for Clemson. Obviously, 6 points there. 6 points wouldn't have ultimately helped them. The turnovers were big, especially the one that was basically a 14-point swing. You didn't score. Clemson didn't score 7, and they did ultimately score 7. So Philip Stedman, wrong call by the refs on the dead ball targeting. Doesn't look like it would have mattered. Yeah, I don't think it would have mattered. I think that's why it's not really that upsetting to me. Clemson was still at that point clinging on for final hope. Think about it this way. Clemson would have needed to stop them, which they weren't towards the end of the game. And then Clemson would have also needed to score in 5 plays or less. Clemson was not scoring 5 plays or less. They're not that efficient. The efficiency is a huge problem for me. Why does it take this team so long to score? Why do they have to grind it out all the way down the field? When I'm sitting here watching 10, 15 other teams that are the top teams in the country scoring in 5, 6 plays, getting guys open out of nowhere somehow. I don't understand it. Tig says we better get used to it. It's going to happen often. John Sarian says this game was worse than the Notre Dame last year. It was almost like the same Orange Bowl team showed up. Clemson Carson over on YouTube says 6-6, the best we played. At best, we played tonight. At best, the way we played tonight, I think is what he's trying to say. So, you think Clemson is now 6-6? This is definitely a game that I didn't think they would lose. Now that they've lost it, you're looking at this team. There's no hope in Clemson beating Florida State now. There'll be hope inside the locker room. There should be. But as far as a fan base is concerned, I don't see any reason why you would have any hope that Clemson could beat Florida State. I don't see any reason why you'd have any hope that Clemson could beat Notre Dame. And, the South Carolina team is worse too. So I don't really know. That's going to be a toss-up there. But I don't see 6-6, though. We'll have to – you have to really show me that one. Wide receiver drops and tips did not help us tonight. Will the wide receiver group get better, or will we be more explosive going forward? I don't understand, Dylan. I mean, how can anybody think the wide receiver group's going to get better after an entire month of August practicing? Jordan Oates says, comment on the blown call on targeting. I understand the call because once you start your slide, the play is blown dead. However, it seems a little bit hypocritical because if you get hit, if you take one step out of bounds, technically the play is blown dead. But if you're hit after taking one step out of bounds, they call it a late hit and the play continues for the offense. The offense does not get penalized as a turnover on downs. Think about the playoff game with the Bengals and the Chiefs. Critical play. Patrick Mahomes goes out of bounds. He gets shoved out of bounds. I mean, he gets shoved while he's out of bounds, and there's a penalty there. And it basically helps Patrick Mahomes go to the Super Bowl because he got to keep the ball and the chains continue. I don't see how you could possibly penalize. I mean, I just think if that's the way the rule is, then that should be reevaluated because, you basically, in a scenario like that, you're not, there's no incentive um, not to hit somebody late on a fourth down. Now, for every fourth down after this, there's no incentive not to hit somebody late, whether they slide or not. I mean, when they slide, there's no incentive not to hit them late, in my opinion, all because of that rule, the way it's um, administered. Will Shipley is overrated. I don't see how you could say Will Shipley is overrated. He was 17 carries, 114 yards, and 6.7 yards per carry. Honestly, Smokey, this is the losers support group. So I am not going to, one of the rules in the losers support group is that I am not going to, um, I'm going to let you have your opinion. We'll just leave it at that. But I think Will Shipley was one of the only bright spots on this game. The hat also says over on YouTube, why does college football forgotten to line up under center and push into the end zone? The same thing happened with LSU last night. They had multiple situations where they could just line up and do the Reggie Bush push and get 2 yards. I mean, it's statistically, I think they've done plenty of analytics on this. You line up under center and hike the ball and push yourself forward and let your tight end and your running back push you forward. You're going to get 2 yards. I think it's like 98% of the time you're going to get 2 yards. But college football teams don't do it because they're so stuck in running out of a shotgun. Jimmy over on YouTube says, let Dabo explain this. I've said it for years. He's overrated and only as good as his coordinators. I don't know if I would say only as good as his coordinators, but it's starting to get to the point where you're wondering what's happened. Like, why is he not able to get quarterbacks that can fit fit what he wants to do? I mean, why are these quarterbacks coming and getting worse? Even with Garrett Riley. I mean, Jimmy, I understand where you're coming from, but Garrett Riley's supposed to be one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. Motivated Dedicated says, shout out to the Taters. Aaron Kahn says, good grief, Dabo's stubbornness to use the transfer portal will continue to hurt. College football game is changing, but we're not. Come on, wake up, Clemson University leadership. Is the game changing and Clemson not? John Sarian says, Supposedly, Duke fans were chanting overrated. J Mo says Tigers look like a 7-5 team. Hey, if you don't mind, while you're sitting here, putting in your comments and getting your frustrations out, make sure to hit the like button. And if you like Clemson stuff, subscribe. I have a show Thursday nights I have a show Tuesday night now on 105.5 The Roar. It'll be this Tuesday night, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., not 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. like last week, because the Dabo Sweeney call-in show will be 8 p.m. tomorrow night. So you'll have Walt Deptula from 3 to 7, and then you'll have Morgan Thomas, myself, from 7 to 8. And I will lead into the Dabo Sweeney call-in show. I wonder how that show is going to go. Going to be a tough one. Going to be a tough 4 weeks, to be honest. I mean, with a game like this, how are you not concerned about Florida Atlantic at this point? Florida Atlantic has Tom Herman and Casey Thompson, a quarterback and a coach that are very familiar with each other. Sublime just subscribe. Thanks for subscribing. Make sure you hit the like. Rodney Johnson over on YouTube says, I wonder if Dabo is still too involved in the play calling, but it's the fumbles and the picks that cost us the game. Yeah, they definitely had a chance to go up, 14-13. I mean, let's say everything went right. They had a chance to go up. I mean, 14-13. Let's say the field goal went right, 17-13. It still would have been honestly, even if everything would have went right, it would have been very difficult for this team to score 21 points. And that is scary. Why is it this team, even under Garrett Riley, is still struggling to score 21 points? Even if everything had went right, can you say that you feel like this team would have then scored 21 points? Because I can't. Would have been close, would have been barely, if anything. Meanwhile, the other top offenses in the country scoring 45 points. And not against Duke. I mean, scoring 45 points against some good teams out there. Christopher Jones says, I'm starting to wonder if we have that big playmaker in this receiver group. Didn't see it last year and didn't see it again tonight. Another big concern for me, Jake Brenningstool, 1 reception. Your leading tight end, 1 reception. You're supposed to be this really big time offense, and your tight end's getting 1 reception here. Your second best wide receiver's getting 1 reception. And Adam Randall, what is he doing out there? Blocking? Was that why he's there? I get reminded that it was Steve Spurrier's Duke in 1989. Many people agree with Brian on this one. Dabo's refusal to use the transfer portal is killing them. Christopher Jones said that Duke quarterback, Riley Leonard, was slippery so many times. We had the pocket collapse on him. He managed to get out there. Look at that scramble he did for the TD. All this talk about the linebackers, they seem to have seem to struggle tackling. Sheridan Jones was slow on many plays. Honestly, I think on the defense, the bright spot for me would be Andrew Makuba's coverage, much, much improved. Makuba was a very big bright. So I would say Makuba was, to me, defensive star of the game in a loss. And then I would say, honestly, after Makuba, would have probably been Peter Woods and TJ Parker, because those two guys seem to always get after it. Peyton Page also, I felt like, did a really good job. I was not overly impressed. I mean, okay, I'll say I think that maybe the tackle leader, RJ Mickens, also got to be up there high, but no sacks by Clemson's defense. Concerning for sure. CJ over on YouTube says Clemson team looks soft across the board. Steele Gamble, we need to start using the portal. There's no other way around it. Keon Coleman just had 200 yards last night for FSU as a transfer. Honestly, Steele Gamble, I can understand where you're coming from, because I understand Clemson is a developmental program. That's what Dabo Swinney wants. But what happens when that's not working? What happens when you have players on scholarship for 4 years, for 3 years even, and they play nothing, but they're still on scholarship? They're still taking up a scholarship spot, and they don't play anywhere. They don't improve anything. They're not helping in practice. They're not able to go full in practice. So they're in a yellow or a green jersey in practice. So they're not even really participating in practice. And then you're keeping them on the roster, and you're keeping them with a scholarship, and they're not even helping you in practice with drills or anything. I don't understand that. I mean, in the world of college football, with the way it is now, it's going to get harder and harder to be able to justify doing those things, because these players are getting paid now. And they're going to continue to want to get paid. And you're going to continue to demand more money from us. Jay Brock says, it has to be a problem with how we're practicing. If these deficits aren't getting exposed in the practice field, we're doing something wrong. Dabo is way overpaid for the last 3-4 years decline. Tiger Tom gets in over on YouTube, says the most glaring failure here is not the loss of this game, it's the near complete failure to develop one of the top quarterback recruits in the country. Why? Yeah, why is it that Cade seems to be one of the best quarterbacks available, and he seems to have the same problems? DJ had the problems. I mean, Cade wasn't really super accurate tonight, but I mean, we're kind of going back in circles about, the wide receiver group may not really be getting open. Jason Thomas gets in and says, Dabo can't continue to hire coaches with no proven track record of coaching, developing, or evaluating talent. John Sarian says, this was the only chance for Riley and Dabo to figure things out on offense for the September 23rd game. They blew it. No chance they get Cade in the offense flipped and ready. Jacob says over on Facebook, got to tackle on defense and definitely got to get better on zone defense. Kicker is a massive question now. Offensive line was okay, not great, not terrible. The main question, did Dabo hold Riley back? Felt very, very vanilla, like high school offense, the worst execution. Hmm. Justin Jordan. I'm going to say this tonight might not have been our night, but we got 3 weeks till Florida State, and a lot can change in a little bit of time, and it might not change. This is Cade's first year starting. We have a new offensive coordinator. Things might not go as planned as it could start going as planned. When we play Florida State, or it could start next year, you never know. But even though this is Cade's second start, he did good. The wide receivers got to break away from defenders and block to get better held. Remember, DJ had a lot of the same problems. We just got to fix it. Well, that's for sure. I mean, no matter what, you just got to fix it. I mean, that's definitely the truth there. No matter what's right or wrong, we may be completely clueless, but at the end of the day, you can't do this. What they did tonight, you can't do. That would be a big no-no. Ryan says this team will be lucky to win 8 games. Lee Harden says, where was his first round draft pick defense? Clemson Carson, we got beat by 21 by a Duke team that tried every way to give it away. Pathetic. Jesse West gets in and says, same crap, different offensive coordinator and QB. That's got to be a concern, right? Same thing, but not the same thing. Same thing, different players, different coaches. Why? I mean, does this team get worse? Caden over on YouTube says Dabo needs to change things, starting with recruiting. Hmm. I mean, the recruiting class for 2024 looks pretty good. Chuck G gets in, says the O-line is no better this season than last. Honestly, I'll tell you this. Will Shipley had 114 yards rushing, and Phil Maffa had 65 yards rushing. And both of them, Maffa was just barely under at 5.9. He was almost at 6. Okay. You had 2 guys that had 6 yards per rush average, over at or over, right? There were multiple rushes from those 2 guys where there was a huge opening. There has been improvement on the offensive line. I believe that. I don't think the 2 sacks that were given up were all the offensive line's problem either. So, from an offensive line perspective, I really don't feel like that was necessarily an issue. I think we're back to square one with the wide receivers again. This group of wide receivers is just the wide receivers that they have that are the number ones are either not being utilized properly or they're not getting open. You know? I mean, Bo Collins, immediately he gets tackled I mean, immediately he gets any kind of contact, he falls down. Jake Brennystool only gets one catch. Adam Randall only gets one catch. Brandon Spector gets one catch for 0 yards. I mean, that's 3 guys. Cole Turner gets 2 for 21. We were told there were 5 top guys. Bo Collins. I don't even remember a play in the end zone to Bo Collins. I don't remember a deep ball to Bo Collins. Adam Randall only thrown once. Only has 1 catch. Spector had 1 catch for 0 yards. Antonio Williams was the leading receiver yet again. And then your 5th guy was Cole Turner, and he had a deep ball, and then he had a drop. He didn't perform well. Corporal Huss gets in and says, too many offensive linemen rotating in. The fumble by Maffa, Tristan got blew up. Sadler is better from tonight's game. I did notice that. I think you guys noticed that as well. They were rotating on defensive end and defensive tackle and off left tackle, excuse me. They were rotating left tackle almost every other series. One series you would see Lee, one series you would see Sadler, and it just so happened that Maffa fumble, Tristan Lee was absolutely destroyed. Dylan says, where was the use of the middle of the field and wide receiver? Also, Jake Brenningschool. I don't know where Brenningschool was. I know they threw it over the middle of the field a few times, but it was not successful. I'll do the passing chart tomorrow. Cody says, Dabo's a fraud. This is what he gets for being so old-fashioned and too big of an ego to go get to the transfer portal. There was 0 separation amongst receivers. Embarrassing. CJ says the O-line and running back actually looked improved, but everything else, utter crap. I think I'm more on the CJ side of things. They still got problems for sure. Some of the more tenured guys seem to got better. Tristan Lee, I don't know. He's going to be blamed for that fumble because he definitely should have been. CL Tiger 17, no wide receivers that threaten downfield. Everything is being played 5-7 yard box on offense. You need an NFL quarterback to throw those types of windows, and Trevor Lawrence isn't in the locker room. Jesse says, I know DJ wasn't the whole problem at all. Now we know. Roland Harris says, which he says second. I must have missed your first. There's a disconnect going on. You notice a serious, almost nervous Dabo in the pregame interview. Then I noticed Cade ignored Dabo's handshake after the goal line stopped. Something's off. Thomas Smith gets in, says 5 trips to the red zone, 7 points, a blocked field goal, a missed field goal, and 2 fumbles. Bad wide receiver performance, worse O-line play on passing plays, and somehow we forgot to tackle. 5-7 team at best. I don't know about that. I wouldn't jump to too big of conclusions off the first game, but I can understand the disappointment. Evan says defense missing sacks and not tackling constantly like last season. Really disappointing. I did like the secondary. How do you think West did? Well, I mean, he allowed Riley Leonard to have almost 100 yards rushing and 1 touchdown. He allowed him to go on a 44-yarder. Clemson is over here getting 18-yard rush from Shipley, and Duke's running backs had 3 running backs over 20 yards, 2 of them over 30 and 1 over 40 on their longest run of the game. So Clemson's run defense was beat up pretty bad tonight. Almost 200 yards. Brian said kicking game was a disaster. That's for sure. Whoever wrote lack of effort or desire by wide receivers is so right. Pitiful. I was getting so upset with the lack of respect that Clemson was getting led up to the season, but Duke's right, overrated. Benjamin Fowler says targeted Brenny once and the ball security was non-existent. I don't understand the targeting Jake Brenny still once. Tar Heel Chip says first Cav go Army. Jesse West says the worst team of the week by far. We should be number 1 on the worst list. Well, let's see. They lost by 21. The spread was 13. They should have won by 13, right? So 21 plus 13. So there would have been a 34-point deficit. Let me look at my sheet here. Where would that put them? See if they've updated it yet. They haven't updated it yet. But Clemson would be minus 34. Yep. Jesse, you're right. This loss is worse than the Boise State loss, worse than the LSU loss, worse than the TCU loss. TCU was a 21-point favorite. This is a worse loss than that. Clemson was a 13-point favorite and lost by 21. The only losses that were worse than this in week 1 of college football was Arkansas State and Baylor. Arkansas State lost to Oklahoma by like 73 points. That's probably the worst loss, I guess, but the spread was very high. So Baylor lost by 11, but again, they were supposed to win that game. TCU lost by 3, but they were supposed to win that game. LSU lost by 21, but they were supposed to win that game. So Clemson is now the third worst game of I got to tweet that. According to the spread, Clemson just put up the third worst performance of the season so far. Okay, Clemson. Clemson minus that sound right, right? Clemson was a 13-point favorite. They lost by 21. So 21 plus 13 means their margin versus the spread was minus 34. Arkansas State was minus 36 and a half. And Baylor was minus 37 and a half. According to the spread, Clemson was one of the worst teams of the weekend so far. Wow. Tough game. Gerald says Dabo's mojo has worn off. Maybe time for him to move on. Jesse says let Riley have full control of the offense. Colin says I'm sick. Rick says, what a mess, or that was a mess. This team was not ready to play. Morris says, this didn't happen overnight. It's been a slow decline. Clemson is lucky to score was as close as it was. Clemson Carson says, we might struggle against Charleston Southern next week, and I'm not kidding either. Ooh. Is it getting that bad? My phone just died on me. Ooh. Let me go back here. David Hood said, this team had 248 days to sit and think about the effort against Tennessee. I really expected this to be a different to this point. Eric McLean said, I thought we were done with the sideways stuff. Walk said, I don't know how to explain this. I mean, all of the analysts that follow Clemson are baffled by this. Crazy. Let's see if we got anybody new here. Jacob Green says, whatever happened to taking shots on some 50-50 balls? Colin and Randall aren't small guys. That's a good question. Did you see any big time 50-50 ball shots? Did you see anything in the end zone? 50-50? Tig said, Tiger Paul 1979 says, Morgan, this loser support group is happening too often. I can't listen to this anymore, but hope your service makes some fans feel better. It makes this one feel worse. Go Tigers. If you're new to the losers support group, again, this is a judgment-free zone. I will tell you my opinion, but I try to stay away from judging your opinion. So the whole purpose of this show is to allow you to put in the chat whatever you want to put. Within reason, I will read it as long as I can stay awake. And then the whole idea originally stemmed from Clemson losing. I can't remember. A couple of years ago, I did this because Clemson lost a heartbreaker, I think to Ohio State maybe. And I just thought, you know what? I can't go to bed this mad, right? I can't go to bed this upset. And so I thought maybe there are some other Clemson fans out there that also can't go to bed this upset. And maybe there are some Clemson fans out there that need to vent, need to just let out some frustration. Because it's not good to go to bed angry, right? Just let it all out. Put it in the chat. Maybe someone will read it. Maybe someone won't. Who knows? Put it in the chat. Release your anger. Release your feelings. And then go to bed. You won't be judged. Judgment-free zone here. Jacob Green, XT had a couple of misdemeanors on him. They were never called a hold. I heard a lot of that on Twitter. Not many holding calls there on the defensive end. There you go. Brian says, is Dabo really interfering with Riley's play calling? A lot of people have speculated that. But I don't know. I'm starting to think it's more of the players here. I'm a coach myself of Little League, so it's Little League. It is what it is. But I mean, there's only so much you can do. I mean, the players got to play. When I played college, I didn't care what a coach told me. I mean, I played 1 year of college soccer and I didn't care. I mean, the coach was there to make sure I was there on time, make sure I did the right kind of training for the position I was going to play. He drew up plays for specific situations. But at the end of the day, I had to go out there and play. We all had to go out there and actually play and do it. And a lot of times those plays, who cares? Like improvise, Yeah, that's the play, but improvise. Yeah, you're the wide receiver, but break off your route or something. Yeah, you're the quarterback, but roll out of the pocket, move the pocket, break off your route. Like it can't be that, like football can't be that rigid. The field is so big, you can't be stuck on going one direction the entire time. You have to be able to break off your route and help out in a in a specific situation when needed. And I don't really feel like Cade has a guy that he trusts like that. I don't really feel like Cade has a guy that's like his dude, like they eat lunch together every day. They play video games all the time. They work out together and they're always on the same page. If I was a quarterback, I would just try with all my power to find one guy that I could just be on the same page with, you know? Gaddy 10 says, yeah, teams have changed against Clemson, whereas Dabo has kept the same play calling since we won the Natty. A lot of people saying that too. Not a ton of difference seen between the two, but I will tell you there's a lot of difference in my opinion. I mean, you had a ton more two running back sets. You had a ton more counters with pulling the offensive lineman. You had a ton more rollouts with Antonio Williams going across the middle of the field. You did have different wrinkles. It wasn't a bunch of just throws to the sideline. Jake gets in and says, really disappointed by the lack of pressure on Leonard. Young says, screw it if it's a judgment free zone. I wish they would coach our guys to be more aggressive. Screw the whole family atmosphere thing. They're supposed to be modern day gladiators. It's hard because it's worked. They've won 2 national championships. So I'm more or less, I don't want to say, hey, scrap everything, right? Especially like the culture, a lot of that is just that's who Dabo is, right? Casey says, I just feel like there's too much complacency in the program. When do you not adapt and grow in any and all aspects of life? You will get left behind. How we always done it just doesn't work. I think it hurts a lot when you have a situation where you're playing against Duke and you get destroyed by Duke starting the season out, and you have better players than them. I mean, you straight up know you have better players than them. So I don't understand that at all. Well, we're at about an hour and a half here, and like many of you, I have to go to work tomorrow. So I'm going to go ahead and close it out tonight. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the like button, help me out there, and subscribe if you haven't already. Work has been pretty crazy, and I do a radio show as well. So I try to do YouTube videos when I was less busy at work and in the radio. I did many more YouTube videos. And right now, I'm just kind of in a funk right now where I just don't have a lot of time for the YouTube videos. But if you want to catch me, you can always talk to me over on Twitter at The Morgan T Show. You can always listen to me on the radio Thursday nights, 7 to 9. And you can always hear me on the radio 6 a.m. on the Mickey Plyler Show. On Thursday morning, Tuesday night. I keep forgetting that. Tuesday night, 7 to 9 for my show. And then Thursday morning, 6 a.m. for Mickey's show. Says keeps saying my audio is messing up, but maybe it is. But yeah, so tomorrow night, catch me tomorrow night, 7 p.m. We'll talk more. Call in. I'd love it. It'd be great. And then Dabo after that at 8. And then the next time will be 6 a.m. Thursday. Again, thanks so much for joining the Losers Support Group. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.